Does anyone here like bananas? I know I do. Actually, bananas are my favorite fruit. So, when I visited Japan for the first time, I rushed into the closest convenience store, craving a light, healthy snack. But what I found absolutely shocked me. Now, let me gauge what you're thinking. Why is this person losing her mind over a banana wrapped in cellophane? But that's exactly the problem. I have lost hours of sleep over this, and I cannot come up with a single reason for why this banana is wrapped in plastic. You see, bananas have these incredible things called banana peels. I don't know if you've heard of them before. They're all natural, they're biodegradable, and best of all, they function as the perfect packaging for bananas. So why are we wrapping them in plastic? Now, stay with me here. This doesn't just apply to bananas. I believe that Japan has a packaging problem. You can buy a bar of chocolate at a convenience store and be buried in layers upon layers of plastic. You'll feel like you were playing a game of pass the parcel, a never-ending cycle of ripping open the wrapping paper of a present only to reveal another and another and another. And the worst part is, we don't always notice it. Let's get a bit more context here about Japan's relationship with plastic. The Group of Seven is a group of 7 countries in Europe, North America, and Asia. They endorsed the Ocean Plastics Campaign, which endorsed a target of ensuring that all plastic products would be reused and recycled by the year 2030. All members signed, except for the United States and Japan. Japan's government said that it wasn't ready for tight regulations on plastic products because it needed to carefully assess the impact it would have on its people and its industries. While this may be true, there may be other factors driving Japan's decision here. Companies are more reluctant to switch over to reusable plastic simply because it costs more. So at the end of the day, we're living in a country that is extremely reliant on plastic. Well, what happens to plastic in Japan? When we throw away that straw in the burnable section and call it a day, do we actually know where it's going? Well, recently, Japan's recycling habits have been brought to light. China announced a ban on the shipment of plastic products into its country in late 2018. You see, Japan had been shipping 510,000 tons of plastic into China every single year before these restrictions were imposed. Now, the plastic is piling up, and the Japanese government is hunting for ways to deal with it, such as burning it for fuel. But what's not really being done is targeting the source of the problem, the plastic production itself. We all know the effects that plastic can have on the environment. Everywhere we look, we see it around us. But when it comes to disposable plastic, we use it once and then we throw it away. Who here bought a drink from a vending machine recently? I know I have. We spend a few minutes drinking a bottle of water and then it can take up to 1,000 years to decompose, spreading harmful chemicals into the soil. And the worst part is, we don't always notice it. Disposable plastic is all around us, and it's easy not to notice how much we use. So for me, an immediate question springs to mind. What can be done about it? Well, usually, we turn to developed nations for the answers, and we always assume that developing countries are lagging behind, especially when it comes to things like sustainability. But the truth is, several countries struggle with plastic pollution. And when we don't ignore those developing countries, we can see some pretty cool solutions. India is a developing country that has some huge problems with air pollution. But when it comes to packaging, we can observe some pretty simple but effective solutions. I remember being at train stations watching vendors trying to sell cups of tea. These teas weren't sold in plastic cups. Rather, they were sold in clay pots. They're completely biodegradable, reusable, and the perfect container for a hot cup of tea. I also remember being present at family get-togethers, and instead of using plates made of plastic, we were using plates made of banana leaf. Completely reusable, able to support food, and I didn't feel that sense of guilt when throwing them away. Finally, instead of using plastic disposable bags when going to the grocery store, we use jute bags, which again are not only reusable, but also biodegradable. So as you can see, these are all simple but effective ways of tackling that problem of packaging. And it challenges this misconception that developing countries are always catching up. But now let's go back to what we can do in Japan. We have ways to recycle plastic, but how can we avoid it? With what I've told you, it might seem impossible, but it's not, because I spent a week without using any disposable plastic, and I believe that you can too. I didn't make any drastic changes in my life. I didn't build a plastic-eating robot to prevent me from using any disposable plastic. What surprised me the most about this mini experiment was how little I had to change in my life. Well, what did I do and how did I do it? First, I started to consider all the ways that I use disposable plastic: convenience stores, vending machines, and Starbucks. And then I developed my plan of attack. I started carrying around reusable bags, reusable bottles, and my own chopsticks and straws. I also invested in a Starbucks tumbler. If you have a pretty strong caffeine dependency that needs a fix about 5 times a week, you invest in one of these and you can save up to 400 yen a month, the price of a cup of coffee. So as you can see, just by making these few changes in my life, I was able to avoid using any disposable plastic. And the best part about it was, I was able to eliminate this major source of guilt in my life. Every time I said no thank you in my very limited Japanese when I got offered a plastic bag at a grocery store, I felt a little bit better about myself. And it's not an unreasonable expectation. It's worth it, not only to help the environment, but also to feel like you are making a difference, no matter how small that difference may be. We all know the problem, and now it's time for change. We can all do our part in this war against disposable plastic. I hear about young people who are fighting for a better world and are tired of being ignored. Take Rebecca Jennings, for example, who wrote an article in Vox about how people are living their lives without producing any waste at all. Or this boy in Nepal who cleaned up a park in his local area and shared it on social media. These people, they inspire me, and I hope they inspire you too. We live in Japan, and there's a problem with overpackaging. But what we can do is start being conscious of how much we're using and the ways we can cut it out of our lives. Let's start making a difference and stop dressing up bananas in plastic. Thank you.